So on the one hand, you got blokes like Mo, who swears it's the best thing he's done in his life. Then the other, you got Big Dave, who says it feels like his life has ended, and now he's a second-class citizen in his own house. Although, to be fair, he said his life had ended when Susie made him ditch the bike.
Would you just stop wittering? Thank you.
God. It's not wittering, it's talking. We're supposed to be talking. I've been trying to talk to you for weeks, but for some reason you don't want to.
Oh, wake up, Reese. What's the point? We don't need a talk. It takes 2 seconds thought. How are we supposed to have kids with my job? Torchwood does not do maternity leave. Oh, I'm sorry, Jack. I'd love to help out with the aliens, but I can't get a babysitter. No. I'll sort out that bomb once I've dropped Reese Jr. off at nursery. Stop dancing around it. It's a dead question.
You know, sometimes I fucking hate you. I mean, look at you. Caught up in your little group, like nothing else matters. Like being a hero is an end in itself, but it's not. You save the city, well done. You save the world, whatever. What for?
Sorry?
I mean, why are you doing it? What are you trying to protect? What are you fighting for? Shut up, I'm talking now, right? You do it so people can live their lives. And there's nothing more important than that. Falling in love, getting married, buying flats, having kids or not. But real life, that's what you're protecting. And if you're starting to think that your shit is more important than real life, then we're not going to last very long here, love.
I'm sorry. It's just this thing at work.
I don't care. When you're with me, we deal with us, right? Our lives. You got a problem at work, you sort it at work.
Hello and welcome to Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast with me, Matthew, and as always, we are joined with...
Hello, I'm Scott.
Yes, hello, it is Scott. This week we are looking at Torchwood for the second time in this show's history, as we are continuing Chris Chibnall month with perhaps one of his best written scripts of all time, with Adrift, one of the later episodes of season 2 of Torchwood. This episode first aired on March 19th, 2008, which was a Wednesday of all days, and a staggering 14 years, 5 months, and 20 days ago. Or, as I've got it written in my document, 4 years, 5 months, and 20 days ago. That was some quick fucking fixing there.
It feels like 4 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, all of Doctor Who feels like 4 years ago. Like, every era was somehow only 4 years ago, but no, it was 14 years ago. At the time, the US President was, of course, George W. Bush, and the UK Prime Minister was Gordon Brown, the last Prime Minister in 25 years to not resign in shame. Some interesting things that happened on this day. An exploding star halfway across the visible universe became the furthest ever known object to be visible by the naked eye. And if that isn't some Torchwood stuff, I don't know. But rather aptly, as the star was exploding, Arthur C. Clarke, the very famous English sci-fi author from 2001: A Space Odyssey to Childhood's End, died of a post-polio syndrome at 90. I just thought it was pretty apt that as a huge star across the other side of the universe explodes, a great sci-fi author passed away. I think that's some pretty cool coincidences happening there. Could you guess as to what was the number one film at in the box office at this time? It is the same for the US and the UK. Okay, cast your mind back to 2008. What's going on in cinema?
So this is like a month before Iron Man came out and changed the game in terms of what blockbusters were. So what could have come out before that? 2008. I'm guessing it was a kids movie.
Okay.
Maybe like a DreamWorks or Pixar movie. Like, I don't know. Can I have a hint?
It is a kids movie. It is based off a very famous book.
Charlotte's Web?
No. Think more.
God, what's that movie about the little girl who dies?
It's not about a little girl who dies.
Okay.
The author is very famous for Green Eggs and Ham.
Could it be Horton Hears a Who?
It is Horton Hears a Who, a film which I didn't see until I think I was maybe 16 or 17 and went, meh, it's fine. It's not the worst Dr. Seuss film, but I don't think any of the Dr. Seuss films are particularly great.
Yeah, the only good ones are the original Grinch short film from like the 60s. That's the only good one, I think.
The live action Grinch is okay.
It's okay.
It's weird. I have a soft spot for the Lorax, even though I know I shouldn't because it is probably quite bad. It's just like the songs are fun, and I'm like, this is a jolly old time, isn't it? You know, and I don't remember it. There's not been a Dr. Seuss film in ages, is there?
Actually, the last one was a few years ago. It was the animated Grinch with Benedict Cumberbatch.
I forgot that came out. And I suppose there's also Netflix did like a series with
Green Eggs and Ham.
Eggs and Ham, yeah, which had very nice animation and was surprisingly funny. Though I never finished it. I only watched a few episodes because it's a kids show, and it's hard to watch those when you're an adult because you're like, this is very much a kids show. But it was fun. So yeah, I guess. Have you ever read any of his books?
I probably have, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, I don't know if I've read any of his books.
I feel like I just
was a kid, like a toddler.
I went to the library a lot as a kid, and I feel like I took out quite a lot of Dr. Seuss books, but I can't remember which ones. Yeah. I just vaguely remember weird drawings and weird rhymes, and like, it feels like Dr. Seuss in my memory bank.
Yeah, what an interesting man he is. But that's Arthur C. Clarke and the Star Exploding and Horton Hears a Who really are the big things happening on March 19th. But it wasn't the only thing happening on March 19th if we turn our eye back to history. In 1822, Boston, Massachusetts is turned into a city. It's it's just happened where I'm staying at the moment in Dunfermline. It's just been recognized as a city. Boston, Massachusetts in 1822, March 19th, got recognized as a city. In 1831, the first ever U.S. bank robbery in the City Bank on New York is robbed for $245,000, which back then I'm sure is like, I don't know, probably $1 billion at this point. Like, it would be just a fucking insane amount of cash. In 1915, Pluto gets photographed for the first time accidentally.
The dog. Oh my god.
Yeah, he was out in space and they took a photo and they didn't realize it was him for many years. And then if we fast forward almost 100 years, actually more than 100 years, something just as noteworthy as Pluto being photographed for the first time happens, Scott. And that is Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, directed by Zack Snyder, first premieres in Mexico City. On 101 years removed from Pluto being photographed for the first time, almost 200 years removed from Boston becoming a city, Batman vs. Superman releases in theaters. Weirdly, in Mexico City is where they held the premiere, and it is a bad movie. I remember when this came out, and it's a bad movie.
Yeah, I've seen that movie like 3 times.
Why?
The first time I really hated it. The second time I saw the Ultimate Edition, which is like the director's cut, I kind of enjoyed it. But then the third time I watched it again, and I'm like, oh yeah, this movie is shit. So I go back and forth in the movie.
I never saw the Ultimate Edition because it was 3 hours long, and I went, fuck that. I saw the theatrical cut in cinemas. I think maybe on the weekend it came out, so possibly in March 2016 I saw it. It could have even been for my birthday, actually, because my birthday's at the end of March. And I remember fucking really not enjoying that film. The cinematography, I think, is one of the prettiest fucking superhero films ever shot. There are some incredible shots in it. But just story and acting-wise, it's a fucking mess of a movie, isn't it?
Yeah, there's also some really good scenes, like the warehouse scene is amazing, but everything else just feels like it's poorly written. And also, I watched it opening weekend as well, and I remember getting ill, like halfway through, and I'm like, should I walk out? And then all of a sudden the movie ended and I felt better. So, Batman v Superman made me ill.
Yeah. I think it was one of the last DCU films that I saw in cinemas. I know for a fact the last one I saw, before like the new, like the Suicide Squad and things like that came out and kind of started pulling me back, the last one I saw was actually Suicide Squad. which I think came out just after this one did. I fucking hated that film. So it's like the DCEU just slowly wore away at me until I gave up on it. Like,
yeah, this was back when I decided to do like midnight screenings. I didn't see Batman v Superman midnight screening, but the first time I saw a midnight movie was Suicide Squad, and that was a big mistake because that movie is a bit shit.
it's so bad. Yeah, I really didn't enjoy my time with that film. But, you know, the DCEU's like fucking in upheaval at the moment because Warner Brothers is doing weird shit and cancelling everything and rebooting everything and shelving things. It's a weird time at Warner Brothers.
I still highly recommend Shazam to you. That's the best DC movie that's been out in a while.
I don't give a shit.
It's really good.
You know, I think I'm more into DC for their one-shot stuff. You know, like, the Batman was great. Joker was a lot of fun.
Well, both of those are getting sequels, so...
They are both of those getting sequels, but I mean, like, not universe connected, isn't it? You know,
right.
It's like in its own little thing.
The thing with Shazam is it doesn't feel like it's connected to the universe. There's like a Superman cameo, but that's really it. It's not connected to anything.
If I watch Shazam, I'm then going to have to watch fucking Black Adam with The Rock when it comes out, you know?
No.
I will.
It comes out like next month, apparently.
Jesus.
There's like been zero marketing.
I remember when they announced that film in like fucking 2012. Like, that film has been in the fucking pipeline for ages. And it's probably going to be fine. Yeah. Like, it's going to be a generic action movie with The Rock. Like, it'll be where he's a superhero. Where it's basically The Rock as Superman, but he's a bit edgier, isn't it?
Yeah, I know nothing about the character, so...
I know the character's a villain, but
I'm guessing... I know he's black and his name is Adam, that's basically...
he's like Egyptian, I think. He's like an Egyptian god. Yeah, but he's Shazam's like arch nemesis. Like those guys, he's like fucking Shazam's Joker, basically. You know.
Right, but also I guess he's gonna be a good guy in the movie because he's played by The Rock. So.
I don't know. The trailer, he's like kind of like fucking. I think they're doing a bit more of an anti-hero thing where he's just kind of killing whoever he likes, but will probably turn into a good guy at the end, or he'll turn into a bad guy at the end. And it'll be interesting. But yeah, I'll probably end up seeing it, honestly.
Yeah, same here.
just out of curiosity. I also haven't seen a Rock movie in ages, mainly because most of them are bad and I avoid them.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the last Rock movie I saw, but that's going to take a while, and we should talk about Torchwood eventually in this podcast.
Nah, let's talk about The Rock. Maybe The Rock should be the next Doctor. But yes, that is all the information I actually have for On This Day segment, and we should move into the writing off segment for Torchwood Adrift.
Oh yeah, obviously this is part of Chris Chibnall month, and of course there's like 3 different eras of Chris Chibnall. There's the guest star writer on Doctor Who, what we covered last week with Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, and of course there's the 2 seasons of Torchwood he was the producer of, which surprisingly is way better than I would say his era on Doctor Who is, because it feels like the characters actually are characters.
Yeah, it's you know, I thought that's just come to me. Maybe Chibnall just struggles to write kid-friendly things. You know, because Doctor Who's much more kid-friendly than Torchwood. Torchwood's very adult and deals with a lot of adult themes and emotions.
Yeah.
Broadchurch, also very adult, deals with a lot of adult themes, murder, you know, relationship drama, things like that. Whereas Doctor Who is much more like, you know, this is a fun adventure where we're kind of learning things, and maybe Chibnall just kind of struggled to, you know, keep that show running balance of stuff where he could manage a script here or there, but having to manage that entire, you know, every character's arc is what he has to worry about, and keeping it family friendly. Maybe he just struggles with that shit. I don't know. It's a curious one, Chibnall, isn't he?
Yeah, it's very curious. Like, so with his Torchwood run, season 1, he felt like feels like he didn't know what the adult part should have been. Like, season 1 is very sex focused. Like, there's a whole cyber woman episode. There's a sex gas episode.
Yeah, it's very.
But I like season 1. It's kind of like a fun B movie. Season 2 is where it begins to feel like, okay, this is what Torchwood should have been all along. Where it's about these hard hitting. It feels like a hard hitting drama at times, like with this episode. And it feels like this is the more adult tone he should have taken with it. You've only seen season 1, haven't you? So
yeah, I have. I've seen like 3/4 of season 1, and I've also now seen this episode. So the way that Torchwood was intended to be watched, I think.
To be fair, this episode feels like it should have come at the end of season 1, I think.
Yeah, I didn't think it was too big of a tone disparity from season 1 to this rant, like, because this is like the later half of season 2 as well.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's like only 2 episodes left of season 2 after this. But I didn't feel like it didn't feel too drastically different from season 1. There's much better character stuff with the husband guy. He's not just kind of forgotten about for a lot of it. But like, yeah, no, it was good. It was good. You know, I don't want to spoil what I thought of the episode before we review it, but I thought it was good. Like, yeah.
So the director of this episode is Mark Everest. He started out his career in 1999, and he only did documentaries before this. This is his first scripted drama he's ever directed, and I think he does a good job. This is the only Torchwood episodes he's done, and after Torchwood he did 6 episodes of Primeval, 7 episodes of Law & Order UK, which was written by Chibnall, 10 episodes of Wizards vs. Aliens, which was the Russell T Davies show he made to replace Sarah Jane Adventures, and he's still working in the industry. This episode on its own was produced in its own production block. This is like the Midnight kind of episode where, you know how Midnight and Turn Left are shot at the same time, and they feature the Doctor and Donna very little because obviously we're shot at the same time. They shot fragments at the same time, and this is why you don't see Captain Jack or Owen or Tosh or any of the other characters in the Torchwood base that much. Mm-hmm. Like, I think Owen only has 1 scene.
Yeah, he's like not in it. It's very much Tosh is the main Torchwood member that you see in this episode.
Yeah, or Jack, because he's kind of like
Jack.
the main...
Jack, yeah, he pops up quite a bit, but yeah.
He certainly does pop up quite a bit. Chris Chibnall always wanted to write a story about people who go missing and to explore the issue of loss. And he thought it fit the storylines of Jack and his missing brother, as well as Gwen trying to find out where she is in her life now. And you look at this episode and you're like, okay, this is certainly an episode written by the guy who wrote Broadchurch. It kind of deals with some very similar themes of trying to, you know... I haven't seen Broadchurch, but it feels like a Broadchurch episode to me.
It's very much like a missing kid, and trying to find out where that is. Whereas Broadchurch, is it a kid that dies in Broadchurch? I think it is. Yeah. It's like a kid goes missing, and they're like, fuck, we got to find this kid. It's very much the same thing, dealing with the grieving parents. The cop investigating it, and all the drama that unfolds that way, and revelations that get made later on. I definitely could see the Broadchurch similarities to this episode for sure.
So Russell T Davies liked the domestic tone of this episode. This episode feels like it's not a sci-fi episode. You could just replace the sci-fi elements with whatever. He took it as inspiration for series 3 of Torchwood, and he likes the fact that this episode explores these characters as real people with families, feuds, aches, and pains. And the thing about this episode is, I think it feels just like a normal drama. There's a whole sci-fi element to it, but it feels like a police procedural show.
Yeah, it does. I do think, and I will get into this a bit more. I think it takes it's a little bit too long for it to actually kick off, the actual story elements to it, but then like about halfway through, when it kicks in all that character drama and stuff, I'm like, fucking, ooh, this is getting interesting. But yeah, it's very, very light on the sci-fi. I was thinking that as well. It's strange because, like, if you were watching it not knowing it's a sci-fi show, I think you'd be on board for most of it until they start talking about, like, he looked into the heart of a star and traveled into the future, and it's like, oh, okay, this is a weird twist on this cop drama. Like,
yeah,
it's a weird episode of NCIS. Like,
that's the thing with series 3 as well. Is like, the sci-fi premise is that an alien wants to basically eat a lot of kids, as you do, but it's kind of in the background, and it's a lot of how people deal with the thought of giving up children to this alien. There's not much sci-fi to it. Like, one of Russell's favorite things about writing series 3 was I get to write gay people talking in a kitchen.
All right.
But yeah, that's basically it for the notes of this episode.
Interesting. Well, before we dive in, there's just one thing I want to talk about here, and that's my confusion with BBC iPlayer. If you're looking at season 2 and all the episodes for season 2, there's a thumbnail on each episode.
Oh, yeah.
The thumbnail for this episode is fucking what's his name?
I need to go to BBC iPlayer. Give me a second.
It's the guy that's not in it but plays a scientist and everything.
Give me a second. I'll get there eventually.
The fact you didn't have iPlayer up and ready is disgusting.
No, I mean I have iPlayer up and ready. It's actually the downloadable iPlayer because I find that easier on my laptop.
Loser.
And now the web page is loading. I'll get there eventually. Series 2. Still loading. I'll get there eventually. Hold your horses. Oh yeah, it's Owen. Yeah.
Yeah. It's Owen with like this generic spinny. I guess you could say it's kind of like a vortex, but it's like metal background behind him. One, Owen like isn't in this episode.
Yeah.
2, this is the most generic fucking thumbnail for an episode ever. And the next episode, Fragments, has the same thumbnail but with Yanto in the way.
Yeah.
Every other episode has like a screenshot from the episode or like a poster, like something borrowed looks like a regular Torchwood poster. What the fuck is going on with Torchwood on iPlayer? Like, it's weird.
All these 2 episodes look like they're just like promotional pictures. They couldn't be bothered.
Yeah.
I don't know why they couldn't be bothered trying to find a screenshot from the episode.
Surely it's more effort to load in a fucking promotional. Like, YouTube can auto-generate thumbnails from just like scanning it and being like, here's a clip, which is what every other episode looks like. It's not like they're curated thumbnails. Like...
Yeah, it's strange for sure, but yeah, especially since Owen is only in this episode for like a minute.
it's really strange. Also, really strange. It's only available for 4 more months on iPlayer. It'll probably get renewed. It always gets renewed. I still don't understand why they have that even as a thing. Like,
yeah, I feel like when we did Torchwood last time, we noticed the same thing. Oh my god, there's only 3 more months left of Torchwood on iPlayer. I hope it stays. I'm sure it'll be renewed because obviously I think the deadline would have been the end of this year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they'll do more unless it goes to BritBox or something.
Oh, I could actually see Torchwood going to BritBox, because it's like not Doctor Who. They've just added Sarah Jane to BritBox, and they'll just like stick all the spin-offs there. Although like BritBox, there's a heap of stuff with BritBox where it's like a fucking mess and it's probably closing down, or turning into a different or merging with another streaming service and like. Yeah.
It turns out streaming services aren't sustainable.
Especially when, like, I'm the only person in the country that pays for it. But anyway, shall we jump into breaking down Torchwood Adrift?
Hell yeah.
Woohoo.
Jonah?
Yes?
Can't see you. Jonah?
Mum?
No. No!
It's okay, Mum. It's me. It's okay.
Stay away!
I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry.
What are you doing? What have you done to me? Ricky, I promise this is Jonah. That is not my son! Give me a hand. I want to get out of here. Will you listen? Listen. You are sick. Listen to me. All of you!
Can you fix my wardrobe door? We bought it flat back. Made it together. Bottom left hinge keeps coming loose. You said you'd sort it.
No.
Every evening you buy a bottle of beer. You let me sneak one sip, just the one. Don't want to get habit with it. You got 2 alarms because you always sleep through the first.
Make him stop.
Talk about the day when you can earn decent money and can afford yourself some decent makeup.
I'm not hearing this.
Don't buy me a double bed. Because you don't understand what I need.
Shut up!
When I ask you why you haven't got married, you say I'll never be lonely. Because I always got you. It's me, Mum. It's me.
Jonah.
I've been so lost. I've walked for years trying to get home. I'm sorry.
Why?
That night, it was late. I'm sorry. Oh, the sights I've seen, Mum.
It's fine.
So our episode begins with a boy walking down a bridge texting his mother, and I'm sure nothing's going to go wrong. Oh no! He gets zapped by a mysterious light in the sky and vanishes without a trace. I think this is actually a pretty solid opening. The mother's like texting him being like, oh, you're 9 minutes late, as she can like spot him from the bridge, and then the second she turns her back, he vanishes. Because I didn't know anything about this episode watching it, and it's Torchwood, my first thought seeing him on that bridge is he's gonna jump off.
Oh god, yeah.
And that's what I thought this episode was gonna be, but no, he doesn't jump off. He gets zapped away.
It's a really nice opening, it just sets up the mother-son relationship without, needing to spend 20 minutes on it. It's a very simple setup for their relationship and why you would care so much in their relationship.
Yeah, amazingly, this episode does a very, very good job building up relationships. Who would have thought that Chris Chibnall had it in him to develop a lot of character?
Like, they don't even have a line together. They're not in the same room, and you just feel their connection, their mother-son relationship, and it's just like, why is this not in Doctor Who?
I think it comes in bits in Doctor Who. I think the closest we've got with that type of relationship is probably Graham and Ryan with their, will he call me grandfather relationship. But even then, that sometimes felt like it was just on the back burner and never really the main focus of anything. But still, I still think that was pretty well handled. But after that, we cut to the opening of Torchwood, which is very short and just a bunch of people whispering Torchwood over and over again. It's great. And we cut back to the same bridge, but 7 months later with Gwen, who's of course the main character, and PC Andy, who I haven't seen since the pilot or so. He's not really in much of season 1 of Torchwood. So
PC Andy only has 5 appearances before this, and most of those appearances are just 1 scene, 2 scenes. And apparently Eve Miles was really keen on the idea of bringing the character back she plays Gwen, because she really likes the connectionship between her and the actor, and it's a really good relationship. And I think in the audio dramas he becomes a member of Torchwood, and he's also a companion to the 8th Doctor.
Oh wow.
Very weird canon.
What an interesting life Andy goes on to have. Jesus. But this scene I thought was a fucking great scene as well, where it starts off with Andy trying to talk about this missing kid, and they're, talking about how strange it is, and it quickly turns into personal relationship drama where Gwen's like, hey, you didn't come to the wedding, you didn't come to my wedding, why is that? And then Andy's like, because I like you and I don't like your husband, I didn't want to see you get married, yeah, blah, blah, blah. It's just really, they have this really charming back and forth. And also this was a great scene for me to know that Gwen had married her boyfriend that she was cheating on all the time in season 1.
It's a very good episode for new viewers. This is the episode I point out to, you could easily watch this episode if you just want to know what the tone of Torchwood is.
Yeah.
A really good episode to watch, because you could watch this without understanding who the characters are. You understand who Gwen is from watching this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. But they go back to talking about the missing kid, and Andy's like, hey, look, just come look at the security footage, it's really strange. And we watch a kid go down the bridge, and the security camera records 6 frames every second. As he's going down the bridge, bang, there's this bright light, bang, then he's gone. And really, I think that it's super fucking convenient that that light lasted 6 seconds. But regardless, it's very cool looking. It's pretty realistic looking security footage as well of the kid vanishing. And they're like, it's really strange that this thing's here.
I'm so thankful we didn't have a moment where we're like, okay, we need to zoom in and enhance.
Yeah.
Which isn't a fucking real thing.
There's so many. I don't remember what it's from. It might be from Brooklyn Nine-Nine or something, where it's I need to, zoom in and enhance in this image, and they just move the computer closer to his face.
There's a They Might Be Giants song which has the lyrics, zoom in and enhance if that were even a real thing.
Brilliant.
I love They Might Be Giants.
But Andy's like, does Torchwood know anything about this? Gwen's like, no, why the fuck would we? It's just a missing kid. And then Andy's like, well, yeah, but like a few minutes later, if not like at the same exact time, fucking guess who shows up? It is Captain Jack. Although he doesn't look like Captain Jack from this angle. It's like, I've looked at it so many times. I'm like, that doesn't look like John Barrowman standing there at all.
The only way you could tell is Captain Jack is if a car had the Torchwood logo on it, because apparently everywhere in Torchwood has to have a Torchwood logo in it, even if it's like a secret base.
It's it's just so they don't forget what they're called. Gwen's like, okay, I'll look into this, and she goes to meet Captain Jack in the Torchwood base. Jack basically dismisses it, saying, no, it's probably just a coincidence. I was there, I like the coffee shop there, and I didn't know anything about any missing kid. Anyway, I'm off to go shag Yanto. And he just leaves again, and we then cut to a coffee shop where Gwen's sitting back with PC Andy, and it's like, I don't know, he said it was a coincidence, and I'm one to believe him. And Andy, I really like in this episode, is much more, pushbacks against Gwen's dismissiveness. He's like, no, come on, Torchwood has turned you into this like shell, where you're just like, fuck it, who gives a shit? And he's like, this is a missing kid. I'm, determined to find out where this kid is gone. I think there's something up. The Gwen that I knew would go and see the mum. What's wrong? Torchwood has changed you drastically. And Gwen takes this quite a bit to heart and goes off to see the mum, where
it's a nice character moment to be like, okay, Torchwood has changed you, but from what I remember from the previous episodes of Torchwood is she's still the same Gwen. She's like, I think the episode Random Shoes really shows that she still cares about normal people and all that.
Yeah.
Do you remember Do you see Random Shoes?
Have you
seen that?
Is it season 1?
It's the episode where the kid swallows the eyeball, the alien eyeball or something.
The last episode I saw. That's the last episode I saw. It was a weird one.
It was.
Yeah, but yeah, but like that's season 1 Gwen. At this point, she's like a year, if not more, into the job. I probably quite a bit into the job at this point. Where she's become this harder shell of a person. At least for this episode, even if it's not consistent with the rest of the series, the way that this episode is written for Gwen, I believed that she was this harder shell, and that Torchwood has like chipped away at her and given her a bit more of an edge on her shoulder type deal.
Yeah, it really works for this episode.
Yeah, but she goes to see the mum, and it's just a heartbreaking little scene, isn't it? The mum, talking about how she goes through every frame of crowd videos to try and spot her son, and sometimes she thinks she sees him, but then she looks at it again in the morning and it's not him. Sometimes she sleeps in his bed, and
there's a pile of videotapes, and it's like, holy shit, this is... I don't remember having video... It feels like videotapes is so much older than it was. This is only 14 years ago, and there's a pile of videotapes, and you kind of expect her to have like a Sky Plus recorder or something.
I mean, it's 14 years ago. I feel like DVDs were still more popular than videotapes. But I guess if you're like recording something, you want to record it more on tape than whatever, if you don't have a Skybox. But Sky was definitely a thing in 2008. It was like the Skybox specifically was very much coming in. For me, it's the TVs. It's those big, blocky, standard definition TVs,
Yeah, but it's also the era of widescreen as well, so it's kind of like a mixture of both worlds. It's very strange.
You know what I miss about old TVs like that? Is if you ran your hands across the front, you could feel the static. I miss being able to feel the static from the TV.
I liked rubbing up balloons against the television. The balloons would just stick to the TV.
Yeah.
So this scene opens up with Gwen calling herself Gwen Cooper, and this is in the original script she refers to herself as Gwen Williams, which is her husband's name.
Right.
But Eve Miles says it would make more sense for a character to keep her maiden name, which really works for a character because she feels so independent from Reese, and this is part of their conflict in this episode. Mm-hmm. She's kind of her own independent person in this episode.
Yeah, I don't like Reese either, so I'm glad.
I really like Reese. But also the mother is played by Ruth Jones, and this is her being cast against type because she usually did comedy. She's from Gavin and Stacey, the famous show with James Corden, before James Corden became who he is today. But one of my favorite lines from this episode where the mother's like, I sometimes lie in his bed just to smell his pillows because it smells like him, but every time I do it, it smells more like me.
Yeah.
That's such a heartbreaking line. And she also worries about being overprotective and making him feel unloved. And he just really care for his parents. It's a really good performance.
Yeah, I thought it was a really, really solid scene. There was only one part of it that actually took me out, where I was like, that's a bit weird, is when she's sitting at the bed and she's like, I write in his diary and I pretend I'm him. I was like, fucking, what? That's a strange thing to do. But besides that, I thought it was a very, very, very good scene. Very heartbreaking, you know?
And again, we're like 9 minutes in, and it's a Chris Chibnall script, and we just feel so much connection between all of these characters. It feels really well written.
Yeah, we also, as Gwen's leaving, the mum's like, hey, Andy tried to find a support group for me, but there wasn't one, so we've set one up. It'd be great if you would come. And I was like, there isn't a support group for missing, parents with missing kids in Cardiff. There's never been a missing kid in Cardiff. It's a strange one, but I guess it works for the episode because they want to have that reveal of like that fucking hundreds of parents that show up later on.
But at the same time, Wales doesn't actually exist. It's only inside of a Doctor Who universe.
That's true. Yeah, Wales isn't a real place. But Gwen's like, yeah, maybe I'll show up. Who knows? Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. And then we cut off to meeting Rhys again, and he's a smelly man. So Gwen ends up heading back home where she meets her brand new husband, Rhys, and he's like, hey, you're super late and you said you'd cook dinner and all this other stuff, and when are we ever going to talk about having kids? And Gwen's like, fuck it, let's talk about it right now. But also, like, all this other stuff is happening at work, and she's like rattling off like a fucking madman, like all these she's just like all these thoughts that she's just rattling and not really letting Rhys talk. That's important for what happens later on. And she's, talking about how she thinks, has Torchwood changed me, and things like that. And there's all this stresses on her. And then she's like, fuck it, let's go have sex, Rhys. And so they do. And we cut to the morning because it's Torchwood. You've got to have at least one scene in an episode where somebody's sleeping together. They cut to the morning where he's eating toast in bed like a fucking maniac, just spilling crumbs all over the sheets, while Gwen's getting called into work because Tosh has discovered something.
One reason why we're talking about kids in this episode is because Gwen becomes pregnant during the wedding with an alien baby.
Right.
I think that's one of the reasons why we're talking about kids, because they're like, oh my god, you got pregnant?
Yeah. Do you want to have a non-alien baby?
Which is a very weird episode, but yeah. In season 4, I think the whole plot is they have a baby.
Weird. But Tosh is like, hey, I've discovered something. When these spikes happen, sometimes afterwards, a negative spike happens, and we don't know what that is. So I've been searching around for it, and it kind of lines up for when all your people get disappeared. Like there's something here about with these negative spikes, but I'll have to look into it a bit more. And then we cut away again to Gwen at like the fucking thing. But what's interesting about this episode is, one, I think Gwen is in every fucking scene, and two, it's strange. Like we never see Gwen really traveling from space to space. It's always she's just, we're cutting. She's in this scene, she's talking to this person. Cut, she's in this scene, she's talking to this person. Cut, she's in this scene, she's talking to this person. And it's weird. You'd think it'd be jarring, but strangely it works for quite a fucking fast-paced feeling episode.
Yeah, it really does work, because every other Doctor Who episode written by Chibnall feels like it's fast-paced, and you just feel like you're missing something. But here, you're getting all the connections, you're getting everything, because it feels like you're just following Gwen. Because also, you don't need to see her walk to work, or get the bus to work, or whatever. It's not important. It just cuts to the most important parts, and that's why it doesn't feel... It's fast-paced, but it doesn't feel rushed. Yeah,
and it actually... it allows time for character moments as well, whereas like I think almost every scene has a really good character moment, it's so strange.
Because there's some scenes in this episode it's like 20 seconds long, but you get all the important information out of the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And also, I miss the idea of all these rifts in Cardiff,
where the TARDIS goes to recharge.
And there's also aliens could come through at any moment, and we have to hunt these aliens. I kind of miss these lower street level alien crimes. Now, I wish there was something like Torchwood to come back and just focus on these humans that could hunt these aliens,
Give it time. You never know what might happen. With Davis back in charge of Doctor Who, you know how he loves a spin-off. Yeah. But we cut to Gwen at the community centre for the meeting of kidnapped kids' parents, first ever one in Cardiff. Weird. But they go in and it's just the mum of the kid, and she's like, oh, it's just you guys. I was like, kind of hoping more people would show up. And then like all of a sudden here comes 40, 50 people all crammed into the room, like, oh my god, all our kids are missing, which, as you aptly pointed out, is very strange that this is the first ever meeting.
Yeah.
Nobody ever thought, like, let's try and get the parents together and have a support meeting when there's like 50 plus kids missing,
like Cardiff
presumably
only
within the last few years. Like
Cardiff only has 100 people, and half of Cardiff is in this room. It feels like there should have been a group made before this.
yeah, they're absolutely.
It's a really, it's honestly a really emotional scene. Just as the music goes off, written by Ben Foster, he's a really good with his score here, and it's just like as the room just fills more and more, you get more chatter in the background, and it feels really nice. It feels really hopeful.
What's interesting is we essentially get two montages back to back here. Because we get like this montage of all the parents filing in and, Gwen and Andy looking at it like, oh my god, there's so many parents, this is so bad. Then we have like a brief intermission where they're outside and Gwen's like, oh god, this is getting overwhelming. And Andy's like, it doesn't need to be overwhelming, we just need to look for one kid. And Gwen's like, no, it's all of them. She runs off. And then we get another montage where she's with Tosh and they're doing like fucking police investigation work, sticking stickers on maps and looking at photos of people. It's a fun montage. I'm actually quite a big fan of the montage.
Yeah, it's a really good montage, and it feels like, oh yeah, you just, Eve Miles, you just fucking do a red dot wherever you like. It's fine.
Just stick a dot on Cardiff somewhere, like, fuck it. Because then when they do like the big reveal of the map with all the dots, I was like, is there going to be a pattern, like a focal point? And it's just Cardiff. All of Cardiff has a red dot. Like
basically, like every street corner in Cardiff is a Rift activity zone.
Yeah. But after the montage, we see just how many kids are missing, and it's basically 4 walls of just missing posters of kids that are like fucking vanished. Well, it's not just kids, it's just regular people. And we cut to a Torchwood meeting with Gwen being like, hey, we need to investigate into this, we need to find a way of stopping it. And Captain Jack, spoiler alert, he is hiding something from Gwen at this point and doesn't really want her investigating. I think his logic that he makes is pretty fucking sound, where he's like, what do you expect us to do? Because one, we can't predict when rifts are going to happen. We can't predict if a negative rift is going to happen, and we don't know where it's going to strike. We can fight weevils, we can hunt down weevils, we can, stop aliens, but how do we stop like a random burst of light that we have no way of predicting? Like, it's an impossible task. And Gwen's like, yeah, but we could help the parents. And then, like, fucking Owen's like, they need counseling, not us. Like, absolutely everybody is right to not really want to assist Gwen in this investigation. I enjoy when Chibnall writes a story that has conflict, that you can see the sides to both arguments, there's logic to every character here.
One thing about Jack in this episode, I'm sure we'll talk about him more later on, it's the idea of him keeping everything out of reach for Gwen. And it's like, I think he should have just told Gwen what's going on, and it feels like, obviously the episode has to happen this way.
Yeah, he is being coy for no reason. Like, there's no reason he should keep this secret from Gwen, because it's not like a top secret thing. It's just like, I don't know, Gwen would freak out a bit, I guess, maybe. But like, yeah, if he doesn't keep the secret, there's no episode. Yeah,
which is like the suspension of disbelief for every TV show. You just have to go with the punches, because otherwise this episode wouldn't happen. And it's a brilliant episode, and something else why do I always forget what I'm going to say? Another thing about this episode is I really like it feels like an episode without the Doctor. It's like, what happens if the Doctor doesn't fix these things? Because the Doctor could have easily come in and fixed the situation easily. Like, he could have found a way to shut all the rifts forever and find out where they're going and save these people. Mm-hmm. But I like it because it feels like the Doctor isn't going to be there all the time, and when the Doctor isn't there, real shit is happening.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the whole theme of season 3 is like, I think one of the quotes from season 3 is Gwen is like, sometimes I think the Doctor doesn't save us because he looks at this planet and feels shame.
Oh, jeez, that's a tough line. Yeah, it's also nice, because how vast the universe is, essentially infinite. And yeah, the Doctor's got a time machine and is basically in every place at the same time, all the time, all different versions of him. It's all happening simultaneously. But it is nice that he can't always come in to save the day. Maybe he's off at this time on a different planet, or he's on the other side of the world fucking in Utah fighting a robot. Like there's always like 1,000 world-ending events happening in the universe. When you think of Doctor Who in like a linear time, or like where all the events are happening canonically, the fucking world is like on the brink of exploding every 2 minutes. Like,
yeah, he doesn't have time to focus on situations like, oh, I'm missing people. I don't really care because the world is going to explode in 2 minutes.
Yeah, Davros is back and he's stolen the moon. Like,
and that's kind of one of my issues with like Torchwood season 4. Torchwood season 4 is all about the planet where everybody can't die. It's everybody's immortal, and it feels like the Doctor should have stepped in at one point. It feels really weird that the Doctor never mentions the year where everybody just couldn't die.
Yeah,
like Amy and Rory never encounter experiences where their grandma...
The cracks in time made them forget.
I guess.
Yeah, no, I think Torchwood definitely works at its best when it's this ground level stuff. The second it becomes world-ending events, then it's like, why isn't... it's the same with a lot of superhero things, though, isn't it? Like you can have a little superhero film, like a standalone thing, like in like the MCU or whatever, where it's like kind of a low-key villain, and you're like, cool, I get it. But then if that villain's like, and I'm going to burn the Earth, you're like, okay, why isn't the Avengers coming in at this point?
Yeah.
Why isn't Iron Man just rocking up and shooting this guy in the head?
There's a similar problem with Torchwood Series 3 where an alien comes to Earth and wants to eat like 10% of the children on Earth, and it feels like the Doctor could have come in at that point, but the story itself focuses on characters, and it feels so smaller scale to the characters, to the point where it's like, okay, the Doctor doesn't need to be here because otherwise the story would obviously never happen.
Yeah.
These characters are more important to the story. The scene is really good, and Owen's one appearances reminds you of, the fact that he's dead at this point. He died a couple of episodes beforehand, and his hand is basically rotten away.
Right, and this is Owen's last season as well, you said as well.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because I really like the actor that plays Owen, but
and also Tosh's last season.
Oh, damn. Does she die in the next episode?
The episode after that, season final.
They both die in the final.
Yeah.
Jesus. Rough. What a dark show. Yes. Oh, wow. It's season 3 and 4 must be pretty fucking lax on characters. If they've lost... They're like, Torchwood's a small operation. They lose 2 of the main guys.
Well, season 3 is more like a mini-series, and Peter Capaldi comes in, and there's this whole political angle. Series 4 was where they moved to America and introduced a whole new cast, basically. Only Gwen and Jack are the characters that return there. But season 4 isn't that good, but we'll probably get to that eventually. It'll probably take ages to cover, but we'll get there.
But then we move on to a very, very good scene with Rhys again and Gwen as they're out having a picnic. And Gwen is like, talking about something about work, and then Rhys is like, yeah, no, but like, let's talk about kids, and like, do we want to, have a life? And Gwen's like, shut up, we're not having kids because I work at Torchwood, it's a dead question, it's not happening. And then Rhys just fucking goes off at her, he starts shouting, he's like, sometimes I fucking hate you, all this stuff, and you only talk about work, you think about work, why are you doing all these things he does my favorite thing in an argument where he asks a bunch of questions to trick the other person into trying to answer it, and then he goes, no, shut up, to make them feel small, I like
this scene. I like the
scene as well.
I like the point he's kind of trying to make, that you save people so they can live a life, and you have to live your life eventually. You can't just focus on Torchwood and always missing persons, because it will consume you, basically, and it will cause a drift. Get it? A drift between Gwen and Rhys.
Oh, wow. That's the name of the roll credits. But yeah, no, it's a very, very well good scene. It's a very well performed scene for Reese as well. Like he has to like hunch over in the most awkward way because like Gwen's sitting on a hill, and be like right up in her face shouting at her. And the entire time I was like, you guys are in public. This would be so fucking awkward to walk by. You know, fucking him there like, I fucking hate you. Like,
oh god, yeah. I've walked by arguments before and I'm just like, oh my god, do I let him in or
yeah,
do I just look the other way?
Yeah,
Like I work in a shop and people have had arguments right in front of me. And I'm like, just fucking buy your shit and leave, please. I don't want to be here.
Yeah, it would be super awkward to walk past, but it is a very, very, very good scene. And like a character scene for Reese that we've not really seen. You know, he's always either been the butt of the joke or he's been the like, you know, dumb guy at home that doesn't know what's going on, you know, while Gwen goes and shags everybody behind his back, you know, but this is, you know, he's hit his fucking finishing line, you know, he's
That
done.
reminds me, one of my least favourite things about Torchwood is that they never acknowledged Reese. The fact that Gwen and Owen shagged last season, it's never acknowledged and it bugs me because I hate character arcs where suddenly somebody's cheating on somebody else and it's never acknowledged again.
Yeah.
Feels like there should be some forgiveness there, but it's never brought up, which is annoying.
Yeah, and then Owen dies, so Gwen gets away with it.
Yeah. But yeah, Reese only has like 3 or 4 scenes in this episode and they all feel really powerful. It's really good performance from him.
And they feel important. They feel like important character stuff. They don't just feel like pointless filler where like Gwen's at home showing her domestic life. They're building off, you know, conflict, and that's where story comes from, is conflict. And this is it's a very, very well written scene. So the episode continues, and Gwen's back at the Torchwood base to go see Jack. She opens up the door to his office, and she finds Jack. He's with Yanto, and they're shagging, isn't it? They're having a good time, and she swiftly leaves the room again.
It's such a tonally wild scene because this whole episode feels like it's a crime drama and all of a sudden people are shagging for no reason.
It's because it's
really
Torchwood.
weird.
It's Torchwood. You gotta have at least one sex scene at like, you know, preferably 2. And you know, they come out and Jack's like, you know, hey, you could have joined us, you know, three's a party because Jack's a fucking sex deviant. I
have a question for you. Would you still work at Torchwood if you knew your boss shagged everywhere around the office?
Probably, and that's mainly because I'm working with aliens. I feel like if you're working with aliens, you're willing to put up with a lot.
Like if there becomes a questionable stain at your work desk, wouldn't you be like, okay, I'm out of here?
It wouldn't be questionable. I would know what it is. Like,
like Torchwood is like the least professional secret
government
organization
agency.
ever.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy.
But to be fair, like most of their other offices have been destroyed, and this is like the last one that's still going. It's like 4 people in a like underground bunker.
Because like, okay, I understand Jack lives here, but also does Yanto live here with Jack?
I don't know.
Is it ever established where he lives?
I don't think it is.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But we could have easily just found a hotel or something.
No, but like the thrill comes from the risk of getting caught, isn't it? That's really where the joy comes from, is somebody could walk in on us at any moment and maybe they'll join. That's what Jack's hoping. Like
yeah, Jack invites Gwen for naked hide and seek as well. It's a very weird.
But Jack cheats. Jack always cheats. Yeah.
Whenever you see John Barrowman naked on this show, I just think of all the allegations against him. It's very strange.
It's fine. I really like John Barrowman as an actor. I love Captain Jack. I'm able to disassociate, real life allegations from the character quite well at this point. Since there's been so many allegations with so many actors, you'd never be able to enjoy any media again. There's so many creeps, but. John Barrowman, I still think he's going to come back to Doctor Who.
We'll see.
I think it. He exposed himself frequently. I think the second that he fesses up, apologizes, and is like, "I'm going to go get help," then he'll just come back and it'll be chill. Like,
I don't see that ever happening, Phil. I think he's always going to be like, it was fun. It was innocent fun. You know, he's always
Maybe
going to be
so.
like that. I think.
Maybe so, but I still think he's gonna end up coming back. He's gonna be back on TV at some point.
Yeah,
you know.
We're still waiting for that release of a Torchwood audio drama where David Tennant crosses over with Ianto and Jack, which sounded fun to me. But I really want to see what happens someday. But
Give it time.
I guess it'll just be lost media for a while.
Yeah, it'll eventually come out, I'm sure. But anyway, Gwen is like, hey, I'm going to work on this project by myself, you know, a non-official, just like a personal project thing. Jack's like, absolutely not. And she's like, hey, but Tosh gets one, Yanto gets one, why aren't I allowed one? And he's like, I told you to drop it, so let's just drop it. And then he goes off, he's like, Yanto, we were shagging, let's go. And Yanto's like, hey, you've got Post on your desk, maybe you should look at that, as he goes back off to shag Captain Jack. Gwen opens it up and she's like, oh, it's some mysterious like mobile device. She gets a call from PC Andy, who's like, I've got tea waiting for you in the cafe that we always sit at and talking openly about aliens and nobody ever listens. And then we get, I think, a really good scene inside this cafe with PC Andy, where he's like, it's not high-tech alien device, this thing that you're holding in front of me, it's a GPS, you know. I like that, you know, Gwen is so used to dealing with alien devices, she's not used to something as low-tech as like a GPS, you know, she was always expecting it to be something more.
Also, just the idea of Andy actually being useful as well as being like a comic relief character, because this episode needs fucking comic relief, and he's really funny in this episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's also very useful, and that's important. Like, most comic relief characters are just useless, you know? We just fumble around in the background, whereas here it feels like Andy could be a reliable character in the Torchwood base. He asks if there's any vacancies in Torchwood. In 2 episodes' time, there will be 2 vacancies, so he could join Torchwood. But when Torchwood gets destroyed, it's a whole thing.
Yeah. But they discover that the GPS is tracked to some little island just in, you know, the middle of the Bristol River or whatever the fuck it's called. And they're like, okay, well, you know, I can rent out a boat and we can both go. And Gwen's like, no, I'll go. And he's like, no, I'm in the story now. I'm going as well. And they head off to the thing. We also, at this point, Gwen calls up Yanto and is like, you left that package, didn't you? And he's like, hoo, I don't know what you're talking about. But they go to the boat bit and, you know, pay off this fisherman to take them out on a ride. And then Gwen is like, hey.
That's another thing. It feels like Yanto could have been a person who'd just be like, okay, Gwen, this is what's going on. Like, it doesn't need to be Jack just explaining to her, but...
Yeah, Jack's got this thing where he just doesn't want to tell her, and I guess Yanto doesn't want to tell her outright, but lets her discover it on her own.
What Gwen discovers is really traumatizing shit, and she drags in the mother, who becomes traumatized for the rest of her life now. And it's like, but, okay, you could have told her.
if there's one thing that Jack's never been good at, it's decent workplace management. Like, you know,
if there's anything this episode has taught us.
Yeah. But Gwen gets Andy to pay off the fisherman, and then it's like, hey, can you fetch us some teas? And then as he's off getting the teas, she pays the fisherman more to take off without Andy being there and leave him behind in a total dick move. And just kind of strands Andy. Then we get a very long scene of just silence as Gwen's kind of walking around investigating. She like goes up to this like lighthouse. It's very prettily shot. And then as she's like at the top, she sees some people walking, and there's like these collection of houses across the rocks, and they're like covering somebody up with a blanket. And then she spots Captain Jack walking as well, and she's like, oh shit. She goes running on down.
It's a beautiful wee island though. Just they really film it really well.
Yeah, it definitely is. She goes running around and into one of the bunkers where she's looking for Jack, and so Gwen is like walking in through this facility. She like gets greeted by a nurse, and she's like, "Oh, did Captain Jack send you? He never tells us anything. Ha ha ha! But we still forgive him. He's so charming." And she's taking her through these halls of this like really like underground, rundown medical facility. It's pretty dystopian looking. It's kind of cool. I really enjoy it.
And it's really well lit as well. This whole episode is really well lit. It's just really atmospheric.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's all these names written on the door, which should be familiar if you're, you know, paying attention to this case. Gwen, it shouldn't take you like fucking a whole 2 minutes to figure out what this is. Gwen, you fucking idiot. But she's walking through the doors, and then eventually it all hits her, where she's like, holy shit, this is all the people that went missing through the rift. These are all the names of the folks that have been missing, that I've been looking for. They're all here. And that's when Captain Jack decides to show his face and try to explain what's going on. But at this point, it's too little too late, and Gwen's not having it. Which, fair on Gwen. Captain Jack should have fucking said this ages ago.
Wouldn't it be funny if Gwen actually walks in on another secret Torchwood is hiding? This is completely unrelated. Like, if she just suddenly walks into another episode by mistake, and this whole thing never gets resolution.
Honestly, with the Chibnall script, like, that's every possibility of happening. But Captain Jack's like, this fucking, because they're outside Jonah's door, he's like, like, let me tell you what's going on, you can't just go in there like all this, and Gwen's like, nah, show me in. He's like, fuck it, shows him in, and we meet Jonah, who isn't what you expect. Instead of being a 17-year-old boy that kind of looks like Aaron Taylor Johnston, he is a 40-year-old bald man covered in burned scars, and very soft-spoken and kind of scared. And we go into this very, very good scene where he's basically just describing what happened to him, where he like ended up on, I guess it's like the end of the earth from season 1 episode 2, where for whatever reason there were still people on the earth when the billionaires were watching the sun explode from space, and they were, the timeline doesn't really line up with the rest of Doctor Who canon, but still. He's on this burning planet, and he gets saved and taken off in a space shuttle, and all this, and completely watches the entire solar system burn before ending up coming back here, and basically lives this entire life before being sent back in time to when he was like supposed to be 17, and it's absolutely tragic.
Yeah, he's also gone completely mad, which is, we find out later on, and it just feels like, okay, Jack explains the situation after this scene. It's like he could have explained way more than he did, so that the mother didn't get scarred for life. But oh well. He's played by Robert Pugh, and he went through 2 hours of makeup every day for this role, which is really good makeup. It's really impressive makeup.
It is very good makeup for sure. And his performance manages to shine through the makeup as well, which is always a hard thing to do with the makeup. But I think he's really, really strong in this episode.
He comes across as childlike, which really works because feel for him.
The scene that breaks my heart is the one that's coming up when he meets his mum, and he's standing there and he's holding on to the bottom of his shirt like a nervous kid, like fucking just that little, just holding on to his shirt. I was like, oh no, my heart is breaking. But Gwen leaves after her encounter with him, and Captain Jack chats with her on a hill, and he's like, people keep coming back, and Torchwood just originally abandoned them, but when I took over, I wanted to help them, and that's what I'm doing. I'm helping them. And Gwen's like, we've got to tell the mum, and he's like, no, that's a bad idea. But again, doesn't explain why it would be a bad idea. And Gwen's like, we don't have the right.
He says it's a bad idea because he can't explain how he's aged 40 years and why he can't take care of himself. And it's like, no, there's more to that, Jack. He's also gone insane by looking into like a dark star or whatever.
Yeah. He like screams for most of the day, but yeah, Jack again with his priorities all twisted. But Gwen's like, I'm just gonna fucking tell her about Torchwood. Which for me, I feel like I thought Jack would be more upset at, but like secrecy and aliens just is not a fucking thing that he's concerned about at all.
Torchwood is supposed to be a secret organization, but the opening of episode 2, there's a giant fish driving around Cardiff, and then Torchwood rolls up to this old lady, and she's like. Gwen's like, have you seen a giant fish driving a sports car or anything? And the woman, Van Torchwood drives off, and the woman is like, oh, bloody Torchwood. So everybody in Cardiff knows about Torchwood already.
I get, well, yeah, that makes sense with Jack in charge. But I also guess, at this point, this is before the rifts in time, and the cracks in time, whatever the fuck. So everybody should know about Daleks. Everybody should know about aliens. The Earth's been invaded, like, at Christmas all the fucking every year, It's the stuff that they established in the episode with Kylie Minogue. People are aware of aliens and just kind of get on with their day now. They're just like, fuck it, this is life, isn't it?
Which is what I like about Russell T Davis's Torchwood, Doctor Who. I mean, like everybody's just aware of aliens and shit. Sometimes we're like, okay, aliens can't be real, or there's some kind of prank going on, which doesn't make sense, but kind of makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
People don't believe shit that happens. They make up conspiracy theories for aliens. Like, it's like, oh yeah, this is a government prank, or whatever.
Yeah, but the everybody forgetting aliens. I've said it in every episode. I feel like it's I hate it so much, but
yeah.
Oh well. Anyway.
But also, everybody forgetting aliens creates a new canvas, so somebody could walk into the TARDIS and be like, "Oh my god, aliens are real! This blows my mind." Whereas if Moffat didn't kind of reset the canon, it'd be like, "Oh my god, yeah, I know aliens are real. The TARDIS isn't that impressive to me because I've seen spaceships flying around the sky before."
Yeah, but I feel like that would have been an interesting take for a companion, you know, one that's just like on board with everything. That's like, yeah, fuck it, I've no aliens, you know. It's like every companion we see goes, "Holy shit, the TARDIS is bigger on the inside," you know. And you know, it's like kind of tradition, and you kind of want to have that moment with everybody for sure, but. I feel like an interesting twist on it would be just a companion that's like, you know.
I've seen bigger.
yeah. I think that would be fun. But Gwen travels back to the mom, and she's like, "I found your son. By the way, some things you should know." I feel like she must do a terrible job explaining it, or the mum doesn't quite believe her, because when the mum does see the son, she like, you know, freaks out and is like, "No, that's not my son, that's some stranger." But just speaking performance-wise, the mother's performance in the scene where she's like, "I found your son," and stuff like that, you know, it's that hopeful but sad and like in shock, you know, there's so many fucking emotions running through her face at once. It's incredibly done.
Yeah, for an actor who's never really done a dramatic role before, she nails it. You feel for her. It feels so believable. But yeah, I think it's more denial, because if somebody walks in into you and says, "Oh yeah, your child just aged 40 years.
Yeah.
He went through an alien rift and all that shit," you wouldn't believe it. You'd be like, "Okay, I just want to see my child. I'm not believing you here." And then you suddenly see your child aged 40 years, and you're like, "Oh my god, I guess this is real. I'm in denial now."
Yeah. And, you know, Gwen even goes as far as to call up Andy to be like, "Hey, chat to the mum and tell him that aliens are real. Tell her aliens exist." Which I guess he does a poor job of as well. I mean, like, Andy wouldn't know too much. He's like, "Yeah, Torchwood's like this secret thing about aliens, I guess. I don't know. They won't let me join." But then she decides she wants to go see her son. And we move into the real downer of a fucking ending to this episode.
Oh, God.
The mother and that end up going to go see Jonah. And she walks in, and, you know, Gwen tries to give her a few more warnings before she goes through the door, but she's like, "Nah, fuck it, I want to see my son. Then she sees her son, and she just freaks out. She's like, "That's not my son, that's some sort of monster. What sort of game is this? Even, you know, she was given ample warning, but I guess I don't know what she was expecting.
Again, it's the whole denial aspect.
Yeah.
She just doesn't believe anything that's going on. She just wants to see her son as she remembers him.
Yeah. And Jonas starts listing off a bunch of facts that really only he could know. You know, he's like, "You know, you helped me build this shelf. You wouldn't let me get a double bed. You buy cheap makeup. Let me sip your beer. You know, all these little things." Then she breaks down. She's like, "Oh my God, you're my boy. And they like embrace, and he starts like, you know, like, "You wouldn't believe the horrible things I've seen. You know, the things that I've gone through to just end up here, Mom," things like that. And it's fucking heartbreaking. Yeah. Like, this like scene is fucking just absolutely punching you in the heart, like.
But it's also like a really happy moment, because you feel like, "Oh my god, this is a really happy, joyful reunion." It's a very different kind of reunion, but there's a way this can work, can't it? Just feel hopeful for a second. Yeah,
and then of course, because it's Torchwood, they come and they kick you in the balls after being punched in the heart. Because after this like reunion, the nurse comes in and she's like, "Oh, you guys have to go." Because I guess she can smell when this is about to happen. I don't know how she knows it's about to happen, but
if she knew it was about to happen, she wouldn't let them in the first place.
Yeah, it's weird. She's like, "You guys have to leave," and she's like, "I'm not leaving. It's my son." She's like, "Well, if you're not gonna leave, stand the fuck back, because this is about to get wild." And Jonah sits on his bed, and he's like, "Oh, it's coming again," and he just starts fucking screaming, and we find out that, you know, when he was away, he looked into the like heart of a Dark Star or something like that, and it like messed up his mind, and now he screams for 20 hours a day. Which, that lung capacity, man, Jesus, that's some control.
So originally we discussed just doing an alien sound for a scream, but Robert Pugh was like, I want to scream for real, and they just put layer upon layer of him screaming, and it's really effective, because if it was an alien sound, you'd kind of feel disconnected to who is screaming.
Wouldn't feel like it's coming out his mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But whereas it's him screaming, so you just feel him, you just feel his insanity just take hold. It's really depressing.
Yeah, and it's, pretty, messing up with the parent watching it, the mother and stuff like that. And they take her away. And then we get another heartbreaking scene inside her house where she's basically telling Gwen, like, before you came in and before you showed me the sun, I had hope, and now I don't have hope. My son is gone. You basically confirmed this for me.
Yeah, because before she met the son, she had memories of him laughing, of him being a kid, being happy with his mates and whatnot, and now her only memory is him
screaming. Yeah,
which is
yeah, it's fucking tough. And just basically kicks Gwen out the house, and Gwen goes and packs up all the files and is like, "God, this was hard." As Captain Jack looks on from the shadows, like, maybe I should have told her about this before this got out of hand.
And then you also cut to the mother just packing away all the videotapes that she has of all the crowd footage,
and she's packing up the bed and all, and she's like opens up the wardrobe and just breaks down in tears when she's sniffing his clothes, because son is gone. It's a heavy thing indeed. Just such a downer of a goddamn episode. And then with our final scene, Gwen's back at the house where Reese comes in. She's like, lighting candles, preparing for dinner and stuff. And Reese is like, "Oh, apologizing, are we?" And then he's like, "Are you okay?" And Gwen just breaks down in tears. And he's like, "Oh, fuck. Okay, right." And she's like, "Just tell me about what's happened." And she starts what I assumed is the narration for this episode, because Gwen is narrating this episode throughout, giving us like information. Like, he looked into the Dark Star and things like that.
Okay, if she's narrating this episode, and this is from her point of view telling the story, she's also telling her the parts where Reese was a total asshole.
Yeah, she's like, "Remember when you did all this to me? Remember when you were like shouting in my face in the park?"
And then the story ends with her being like, "Okay, then I came home and I started lighting the candle,
and I started this narration, and this narration started like this." But it's a really downer of an ending to a really solid episode. Like, this episode, a happy ending for this episode would have been great, but it's Torchwood and you're not allowed happy endings. You have to feel bad at the end of watching Torchwood. And
it feels natural for me at the end. Like, with any other story to be like, "Oh my god, we want to end it on a dour note." It doesn't fit, but this feels like it's fit. There's a moment of hope and it just completely goes downhill, and it feels like it doesn't feel like it's Doctor Who. It feels like it's Torchwood, and it's adult in the sense of where it feels real.
I mean, when the credits roll in this episode, you go, whew, like, because it's heavy. It's a heavy journey. You're kind of glad that it's over, but you don't get that happy, ending that you were aiming for. But it's fucking incredibly written. The character work is phenomenal. It's Chibnall at his best. Like, all of Chibnall, the things Chibnall's good at is he's good at grounded stories. He's good at personal drama. He's good at missing people. He's good at these crime stories, and this episode just lets a lot of his strength shine. But what did you think of it revisiting?
Yeah, a little peek behind the scenes here. We were discussing maybe doing Cyberwoman as a Torchwood episode, and Cyberwoman is a fun episode you can make fun of, but I think a lot of this month would have just been making fun of Chibnall's writing, whereas here Adrift is like really Chibnall is best. It's my favorite Chibnall script of the Doctor Who universe, which is why I picked it, obviously. Yeah, it still holds up upon repeat viewings. I've watched it like 4 times over this past week, and it just hits me every fucking time. It's perfect. It's really solid television. And I wish this is one of Chibnall's last scripts. He's only got 2 more scripts of Torchwood after this. And I wish we had more Chibnall scripts of Torchwood, because I think Torchwood is where he shines the best.
Yeah. He's got some good Doctor Who scripts.
Yeah.
I'm currently rewatching Jodie's Era at the moment, and I'm not hating it. I'm kind of actually digging it. So maybe history will look back on Chibnall with a kinder eye than what it has been in the moment. I hope so as well, because I've grown softer over Chibnall, but this is definitely, I think, one of the best things he's ever written. It's very, very good. But Scott, I think you know what I'm going to ask you. What have we got coming up next week on the podcast?
Next week we've got the very controversial episodes, Ascension of the Cybermen. Well, it's not controversial. I think the part 2 to that episode is more controversial, but yeah, it's the episode that really kind of changed your opinion of Chibnall for the worse, I think.
I think so. We'll see. Yeah, because this is part 1 basically of the Timeless Child 2-part finale. Well, I guess it's really part 2 of a 3-part finale, if you count the Haunting of Villa Diodati. But I'm interested to revisit this. Obviously at the end of last month we watched and covered the Haunting of Villa Diodati. So now, having covered some Chibnall scripts, going back into this finale, I'm curious as to see what my opinion of it's going to be. Now that because we've seen the Timeless Child story basically completed. At this point.
Completed to the point where she shoves the storyline into a box and forgets about it.
Yeah.
That's how the storyline resolves.
Yeah, it's great. I'm curious as to what this is going to be like.
Yeah, earlier on we were referencing, Chibnall likes to do scripts where you think it's one thing at the start, where you think it's one thing, and then it turns into something else, and it's unfocused. But that's Ascension of Cybermen and The Timeless Children. It starts off with a Cyberman war, and then all of a sudden it's this weird monologue about where the Doctor came from. It doesn't fit. I mean, then all the Time Lords die, and the Cybermen become Time Lords, and it's a mess.
It's a strange one for sure. It's just I've only seen it once, so I'm going in with an open mind. Maybe I'll fucking adore it. I doubt it, but maybe I will. But in the meantime, you can send us an email at whowatcheswhopod@gmail.com with all of your Chibnall thoughts and theories and opinions, and we will read it out at the end of the month with our monthly roundup podcast, news podcast. That's whowatcheswhopod@gmail.com. In the meantime, you can find us on Facebook at Who Watches Who, on Twitter at Watches Doctor. Podcast is available in video form at youtube.com/whowatcheswho, where just search us up. We're really easy to find. It's also available in audio form wherever you listen to podcasts. There's about 1 billion links in the description. Make use of them. Follow me on Twitter at Cloth323. Follow me on Twitch to watch me play some video games at Something Orange. We'll chat Doctor Who. It's a good time. Next week, Ascension of the Cyberman. But until then, bye-bye.
Bye.